In a modern household, a Machiavellian parent would never outright forbid a child from seeing a problematic friend. Instead, they would orchestrate a more enticing reality. They would meticulously plan irresistible weekend trips, enroll the child in a captivating new activity that conflicts with the friend's schedule, and make their own home the premier hangout spot for a newer, more desirable social group. The parent, by controlling the environment and the options, makes the rival friend obsolete not through confrontation, but by becoming the architect of a superior alternative, allowing the child to believe they are making their own choice to drift away, during a heated family argument over finances. A Machiavellian individual would avoid the emotional fray and instead work the peripheries. Before the next family meeting, they would have private, concerned conversations with other influential family members, not directly attacking the main rival but reframing the issue. "I'm worried that Mom's emotional attachment to this spending is clouding her judgment about what's truly best for the family's future." By the time the meeting convenes, the sentiment has already been seeded, the rival's position is now perceived as selfish and emotionally driven, and the Machiavellian's cooler, more rational approach appears to be the only sensible path forward, winning the debate without ever having to directly fight it. To ensure their child is perceived as the most educationally proficient, a Machiavellian parent would master the art of shaping the teacher's perception. They wouldn't just help with homework, they would ensure their child's projects are so professionally presented that they stand out visually, and they would coach their child to ask specific, insightful questions in class that create an aura of intelligence. Simultaneously, they might volunteer for the Parent-Teacher Association, offering subtle praise for the teacher's methods while gently mentioning how other, rival students seem to be struggling or lacking in effort, ensuring their own child is framed as the dedicated, standout scholar by comparison. In a competitive workplace environment, a Machiavellian employee facing a rival for a promotion would never openly criticize. Instead, they would weaponize helpfulness by volunteering to mentor the rival on a complex project, ensuring their own contributions are hypervisible in reports while the rival's minor stumbles are documented as learning opportunities for the team. They would also build a coalition of indebted colleagues by offering small favors, creating a network of support that quietly advocates for them when management seeks opinions, all while maintaining a flawless facade of collaboration and team spirit, thereby isolating the rival through a campaign of perceived benevolence. When faced with a toxic workplace attitude from a bullying manager, a modern Machiavelli would not report it to HR, creating a messy, public confrontation. Instead, they would meticulously document every instance of aggression in a private, contemporary log, biding their time. They would then use this ammunition not to attack, but to strategically ingratiate themselves with the manager's own superiors, positioning themselves as the competent, stable, and professional alternative. When the manager eventually oversteps with someone else, the Machiavellian is perfectly positioned to, reluctantly, step in, their dossier of evidence ready to ensure the manager's removal is swift and absolute. Clearing their path to power, in a business transaction, a Machiavellian negotiator understands that the deal is won long before the final meeting. They would invest significant time in building social rapport with the other party's key decision-makers, learning their personal pressures and professional insecurities. During negotiations, they wouldn't attack terms head-on but would instead frame concessions as solutions to the other party's hidden anxieties, making their own offer appear uniquely empathetic and risk-free. They might also create a false sense of scarcity or competition, implying other buyers are waiting, to force a quicker decision on their terms, all while maintaining a persona of unwavering integrity and concern for the other party's success. A Machiavellian parent dealing with a child who consistently underperforms in a specific subject would not yell or punish. They would execute a silent coup on the child's own mindset by systematically dismantling the association of the subject with failure. They would find a charismatic tutor the child admires, connect the subject to the child's deepest interests, e.g., linking math to video game design, and celebrate microscopic improvements with disproportionate enthusiasm. They are not fighting the problem of bad grades, they are surgically replacing the child's narrative of, "I can't," with a new identity of a learner, making the poor performance an obsolete part of the child's self-image. Within a family dispute over caring for an aging parent, a sibling who wants to avoid the burden wouldn't refuse to help. They would instead launch a campaign to appear overwhelmingly concerned while subtly demonstrating their own incompetence. They would accidentally mix up medication times during their shift, become flustered over financial paperwork, and express so much anxious worry about making a mistake that the other siblings, fearing for the parent's safety, eventually suggest it's best if they just handle things themselves, thereby granting the Machiavellian sibling their freedom without them ever having to ask for it. To secure a coveted spot on a school team or in an advanced program for their child, a Machiavellian parent would bypass direct appeals to the coach or teacher. Their strategy would be to ensure their child is seen as indispensable to the social fabric of the group. They would have their child organize team bonding events, become the de facto leader in group projects, and be the one everyone relies on for notes and support. When selection time comes, removing their child wouldn't just be about losing a player or student, it would be perceived as disrupting the entire team's or class's dynamic, making their inclusion feel necessary for group cohesion, not just individual merit. A modern Machiavelli trapped in a dead-end job wouldn't complain. They would systematically make themselves the only person who understands critical, yet tedious, systems. They would become the sole keeper of certain passwords, the only one trained on archaic but vital software, and the go-to expert for key client relationships. By creating this quiet monopoly on crucial operational knowledge, they make themselves immune to layoffs and prime for promotion, as their departure would cause immediate and significant disruption, giving them immense leverage and power over their superiors who now depend on them. In a business deal to acquire a smaller company, a Machiavellian CEO wouldn't just make an offer. They would first engage in a strategy of friendly support, offering partnerships and sharing resources that make the smaller company dependent on their ecosystem. Then, they might engage in poaching, hiring away key talent with lavish offers not for their skills but to cripple the company's innovation engine. Finally, when the smaller company is weakened and reliant, they would make a lowball offer, positioning it as a lifeline to save the company from the collapse the CEO's own actions helped engineer, framing the predatory acquisition as an act of mercy. When a child is being socially excluded at school, a Machiavellian parent wouldn't call the other parents to complain. They would engineer a complete social recalibration for their child. They would identify a different social group with aligned interests and make their home the epicenter of its activity, stocking the best snacks, funding the most desirable activities, and being the cool, permissive parent everyone wants to be around. They make association with their child a status symbol, and the original group of excluders, now on the outside looking in, become the ones who are left behind and irrelevant. If a Machiavellian employee identifies a lazy but well-liked colleague who is a rival for influence, they wouldn't report them. They would instead volunteer to be their partner on a high-visibility project. During the project, they would shoulder the entire workload with a smile, ensuring the rival's contributions were negligible. In meetings, they would present the flawless work, publicly thanking the rival for their big-picture ideas or moral support, a praise so vague it highlights their lack of concrete input. The manager sees one employee delivering excellence and another being carried, permanently reshaping their perception of who is truly valuable without a single negative word spoken. During a family inheritance dispute, a Machiavellian heir would avoid a legal battle. They would instead launch a campaign of sentimental warfare, spending months meticulously cataloging old photos and crafting narratives that highlight their own unwavering dedication to the deceased relative. In contrast, they would frame the rival heir's occasional absence as a pattern of neglect, using their own curated evidence to paint themselves as the only emotionally deserving party, swaying the court of family opinion long before the will is ever read, and making any claim by the rival seem greedy and illegitimate. A modern Machiavelli seeking a partnership with a larger firm wouldn't lead with a pitch deck. They would first work to become an indispensable vendor or a critical component of the larger firm's supply chain on a small scale. Then, they would slowly begin to acquire or partner with the firm's other small vendors, consolidating their position. Finally, they would demonstrate how their now integrated web of services is so efficient that the larger firm's operations would grind to a halt without it, forcing a merger or partnership on highly favorable terms from a position of engineered necessity, not negotiation. A student vying for valedictorian against a close rival wouldn't just study harder. They would adopt a strategy of information control and perception management. They would form a study group that subtly excludes the rival, hoarding the best resources and insights. They might also engage in psychological warfare, casually mentioning how stressed they are about a test they know they will ace, causing the rival to second-guess their own preparation and potentially overstudy, leading to burnout. They win by controlling the academic environment and the psychological state of their competition. A Machiavellian manager facing a talented but rebellious subordinate wouldn't fire them. They would employ a strategy of benign neglect, granting the subordinate complete autonomy on a project destined to fail due to lack of resources or support. They would set them up for a very public failure, then step in as the merciful leader to save the project, demonstrating the subordinate's recklessness and their own essential leadership. The subordinate's talent is neutralized, and the manager's authority is reinforced, all under the guise of empowering an employee. In a business negotiation over a contract, a Machiavellian executive would never reveal their desperation. They would instead use time as a weapon, dragging out proceedings while subtly letting it be known that they are entertaining other offers, even if they are not. They would use flattery and the illusion of a shared vision to extract more concessions, framing each of their own demands as a necessary step to achieve the common goal. They win not by overpowering, but by masterfully manipulating the timeline, the information, and the emotional investment of the other party to create a reality where their terms are the most logical conclusion. A parent dealing with a child's defiant phase wouldn't engage in constant power struggles. They would execute a silent coup on the child's motivation. Instead of demanding chores be done, they would link the desired behavior to a coveted privilege in a system of their own design. They wouldn't say, "No video games until your room is clean." They would create a system where earning game time through completed tasks feels like the child's choice. They are not issuing commands, they are architecting a choice architecture where the parent's desired outcome is the most appealing and logical path for the child to take, preserving the child's illusion of autonomy while ensuring compliance. A modern Machiavelli, when passed over for a promotion, would never show anger or disappointment. They would immediately and publicly congratulate the winner, offering their full support. Privately, they would begin a twofold strategy. First, they would become the new manager's most indispensable lieutenant, learning every detail of their new role and weaknesses. Second, they would quietly document every single misstep and decision that leads to any negative outcome. When the new manager eventually falters, and they will, the Machiavellian is positioned as the loyal, competent, and prepared heir apparent, having used the rival's own tenure as the training ground for their own inevitable takeover. Power is not a spectator sport. It is a discipline, a practice, and for those willing to see the world as it truly is, a blueprint. The silent coup is not about malice, it is about mastery. Mastery over perception, over strategy, and ultimately, over your own trajectory. The tools are there. The choice to use them is yours. If you found this lens on the world valuable, use your power now. Subscribe. Fortify this channel against obscurity. Next time, we abandon defense. We will delve into a far more dangerous art, the predator's gambit, how to annihilate a superior opponent and claim their territory. It is not for the faint of heart. Until then, watch and learn.